the weird thing going on with your body that isn't weird enough to go to the doctor for? Story 1 guys, if you're fainting or your head is exploding into migraines all the time or your hand stops working, that is a good reason to go to the doctor. I opened this thread expecting to see sometimes I sneeze a lot, not I am quiet often in excruciating pain. Come on dudes. Some migraines are treatable, and just because normal pain medication didn't help doesn't mean nothing else will. If you're randomly losing consciousness, that's not normal and not good. Your hand is kind of important. Maybe you ought not just immediately give up on it. Story 2 My stomach makes a lot of noise, no pain, normal amount of gas, I'd say, but it almost constantly growls or gurgles. Even when I'm not hungry, ETA I have severe anxiety and panic disorder, so I always assumed it was stress doing this to me. Story 3 Weird but mostly harmless. If I am startled awake by anything I am extremely nauseated for about 30 minutes afterward. If I whack up from my alarm this does not happen. Edit Some people have said they don't get why the alarm doesn't cause this, and I think it's just my body knowing expecting to be awakened at this time, so it's not startling me as much as say someone barging in the room. Story 4 Sometimes I get a twitch in my stomach that feels like what my kid felt like kicking. I'm not pregnant. I haven't been pregnant for almost 5 years now. It is probably gas, but it freaks me out every time cause like, oh you know, am I pregnant? Oh. Story 5 You know how sometimes if you squeeze pimples blackheads out comes a tiny hard white yellowish stone, the thing that was blocking the pore. Well my body recently produced 2 tiny, shiny, smooth 1mm big pinkish pearls. It looked 100 like a super miniature pearl. Guess I'm turning into an oyster. Story 6 I had sinus surgery a year ago. Best decision ever. Opened up my sinuses and I can breathe better than I have in decades. Has majorly cut my instances of sinus infections and other nasal issues. I'll always have some issues but they're so much easier to deal with. But my super fun new symptom is that sometimes when I tip my head, water runs out of my nose. It is not a CSF leak as I have no other symptoms and it's not frequent enough. It's just a byproduct of chronic rhinitis watery discharge finally being able to leave my sinuses versus staying trapped until it becomes infection. Still, it's rather gross to suddenly have a bunch of water just bloop out my nose if I tip my head. Story 7 My hands and feet are completely unable to keep warm by themselves even when inside. In warmer climates it's not a problem, but from late autumn to early spring my hands will get inexplicably cold to the point of people telling me that my hands are even colder than the room. I've heard a few times that it cold be a blood pressure thing but it doesn't seem big enough to go to the doctor with. Story 8 To know that intense fear of death dying you sometimes randomly get, for me it's a sign I have to, the second it's out of me, I feel instantly better normal. Story 9 I build up loads of static charge. Much to the amusement of my friends and colleagues. Doesn't matter where I am, what I eat or drink or where etc. I get like 20 static shocks a day and just need to deal with it. Story 10 Whenever I need to pee and then finish peeing, I always have to go back a minute later because I can still physically feel more pressure in my bladder. I then pee out just several drops which feel scalding hot compared to normal pee. Story 11 A single hair grows from inside my urethra and eventually comes out my hole and I have to pluck it every few months. Weird sensation but very satisfying when I do a good job. It grows from about an 114-inch in. Story 12 Sometimes, my right ear primarily just goes deaf with a high-pitched sound. It lasts less than 30 seconds and my hearing is normal again. I kept a record of the frequency that it happened and shared it with an ENT. He didn't seem concerned and saw nothing wrong with my ears or hearing. Additionally, my left ear sometimes has painful fluid buildup and I have to click my jaw to release the pressure. Weirdly, by doing this, I seem to have resolved the weird deafening ring described above. Lastly, my tinnitus is constant and varies in degree. Occasionally I get these loud clicks that sound like an insect clicking at my ear. My ears are fun. Also, I choke on liquids a lot like daily. My friend jokes that my tubes are all messed up but she might have a point. If my head is tilted back just a little bit I'll choke when drinking. Not sure if I'm inhaling at the wrong time or what. Just this morning I choked on my own saliva like I have many times before. Story 13 If I gently rub the skin from the right corner of my lips down to my jaw, my hearing on that side goes fuzzy if not completely gone. Just for the duration I'm touching that spot on my face, weird. Story 1430 Sometimes my heart beats extremely hard for like 3 to 4 beats. I don't know how to explain the feeling. It's like my chest sinks in, and those 3 to 4 beats are like super sensible. I always panic a little as well then it's back to normal. Obviously I have never experienced a heart attack but I imagine it is what it would feel like. It doesn't occur regularly, maybe 1 to 2 times a year. I had this happen since I can remember. And the thing is I did sports in school. I regularly went to sports doctors who did heart checks, EKGs, blood tests and whatnot and nothing showed up ever. No heart problem in my family either. So I guess when it's time it will be time. Story 15 2 more minor things I suddenly grew one really long eyelash about 1.5 inches seemingly overnight. And lately whenever I eat candy or anything super sweet, my nose gets really runny. Story 16 Sometimes when I sit down to pee and it takes a minute for the pee to start, I can trigger it by tickling a nerve at the very top of my butt crack for some reason, just scratching that part of my body triggers it to start flowing. It's so odd, but it works every time. Story 17 I have 2 extra holes on my ears and if I squeeze them nothing really visibly comes out, just a stinky smell, sometimes a clear substance like water or sometimes a little white, but it's not a pimple, it's just a hole on my ear. Story 18. When I touch my stomach on left side where my last rib is, I can feel it on my back. I had spinal surgery 16 years ago, so I have a pretty big scar on my back, and I just figured that the nerve somehow healed. Funny, don't know for sure though. Story 19. I can't burp, so often get really annoying gurgling sounds in my throat and chest. Can make me feel very sick as well, especially if I've had something like beer. Always thought I was just weird, but then met my now wife who has the same problem. We googled it, and apparently it's a real thing. Felt slightly vindicated about the fact I sometimes used to throw up after 2 to 3 pints back when I used to go out every weekend, and people just assumed I was a gigantic lightweight. Story 20. Sometimes when I wake up, only from a nap and only when I wake up suddenly, my entire body feels like it's vibrating and I get nauseous. The best cure I've found is going back to sleep for a few more minutes. Story 21. On the off chance that anyone sees this and can relate, a friend pointed out while we were camping that my pee bubbles on the ground, while theirs disappears completely, weird, and laughed it off. We had been drinking heavily after all. I noticed again when I was sober, while my blood pressure was high. Everyone go to your doctor for this. Don't die because you're a... I actually posted about it a while ago. View on my post history with more details if anyone really wants a read. Story 22. In my case, I went to the doctor for what I thought was an annoying but common enough problem, but then came out having almost every weird and nonsensical medical happenstance I've encountered explained with one condition. Back in August of last year, I somehow managed to sprain my ankle while stepping off a curb, and when it still hadn't healed after 4 months, I was recommended a physical therapist. After a few months of that, we realized I was hypermobile in all my joints, and that it may be that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. When he described some of the symptoms, it was like every weird little medical puzzle piece in my life suddenly snapped into place. Turns out, randomly dislocating your leg out of your hip socket while bike riding isn't something a typical 16-year-old's body should be able to do. Getting bruises that you have no idea how or when they got there, shockingly, isn't part of the average human experience. Sure, I mostly have it under control now, but 8-year-old me probably shouldn't have been dealing with the digestion issues I had. And yeah, maybe I am just tired because I'm an American living in the year 2025, but maybe it's okay to finally admit that my constant fatigue might be medical in nature. There's not a cure for it, and to be frank, with the way things are going, I'm a little worried about having it officially diagnosed and what that might mean for my insurance in the future, but man, it would explain a lot. Story 23. I can hear the hum. Sounds like a massive diesel generator or engine way off in the distance. Sometimes it's imperceptible, other times it's infuriatingly distracting. Story 24. I can consistently crack my right knee. If I sit down at just the right angle, it cracks every time I swing it back and forth. It doesn't hurt at all, but it cracks all the time. Story 25. Every now and then I have a sudden pain in a finger, so bad I have to exclaim ouch. Then that finger swells and bruises up very quickly. Happens to different fingers. Story 26. I sometimes get weird urges to shake my head, but this has happened since I was a little kid. Pretty sure it's a tic. Sometimes I also have the urge to squint my eyes hard. Story 27. Probably something I should go to the doctor for. TBH, I'm concerned I might have a mild form of narcolepsy, but it could also just be lack of quality sleep. Unsure. I've never been told I snore, so I don't think it's sleep apnea, but a sleep study might be in order. Some people have that midday crash, but mine seem like sleep attacks. I'll just be sitting on the couch and suddenly my eyes get super heavy and I become less and less functional until I finally pass out, or I get a headache if I force myself to stay awake until it passes where it's not appropriate to sleep like work. If I opt for a nap, or the sleep wins, I wake up feeling super hot with a weird flushy feeling across my brain that kinda feels good. Story 28. I can't bend my thumb without my index finger bending as well. Happens automatically as if they're connected. And when my hands get too wet shrinkly, I can't touch 90 of textures. My one wet hand touching the other is the absolute worst, and I have to wait until they're back to their normal state to touch anything really. Story 29. I have to be very careful to eat enough food every day or I'll get a really bad headache, and it feels like my organs are failing honestly, like I'm constantly on the brink of dying from starvation. I think it's something like hypoglycemia, but I've never had it confirmed or anything. If I don't eat enough, then sometimes I'll go to bed with just a tiny headache, and if I ignore it, it gets worse and then I get nauseous. My go-to solution is to take a few ibuprofen and eat a bowl of oatmeal. By the time I'm done eating I feel right as rain, so it's either the painkiller, the food, a combination of both, or just the passage of time that's making me better, who knows. I'm sure this sounds like a ridiculous issue to most people, but the reason it's a problem for me is that my body doesn't give me the hungry signal at the right time for some reason. If I'm not careful to keep track of when I ate to know when I should eat next, then my only heads up is the previously mentioned headache and nausea. Making things worse is the fact that for me hunger and appetite are two completely separate things. So there can be times where I definitely need to eat food, but I guess my mouth or stomach just doesn't feel like it at the moment, and if I try to force myself to eat then my throat closes up. Story 30. My ears leak a lot. It's always a small trickle, been happening for years, was told it's probably my sinuses. Still though, my ears leaking, I was convinced it was spinal fluid for a hot minute. Still don't know why. Story 31. If I get anxious or in a hurry, my body masturbates on its own. I don't touch myself, but semen comes out, and I'm uncomfortable with this, and no one knows about this. Even ChatGPT didn't help me. Story 32. Lately I have been feeling like I'm almost having an out-of-body experience, like constantly. It's so weird, like I'm not full here or engaged, and then feeling like I'm going to explode with anxiety. No idea if they are related. Story 33. I get these weird single hiccups sometimes randomly during the day. It's almost like just a really sudden, quick and forced inhale that comes out of nowhere. I've noticed it's more common in periods of stress where it can appear several times a day versus just every once in a while. Story 34. I get excruciating pains in my head. I've heard them described as headaches. I went to the doctor years ago and he made me feel like I was overreacting to temporarily debilitating pain in my head, literally 1 to 3 seconds at most. It's been happening ever since, maybe 20 years, but nothing ever escalates, so I just live with it. I just had a kidney stone and it cost me $6,700. I was convinced it was appendicitis, but looking back at it, I should have just died in the street. Story 35. Diarrhea for 5 months. Seriously, this happened to me last year too. Went to a gastroenterologist, I was weighed, he prodded my stomach a bit, and then just shrugged his shoulders, patted me on my back, and said, "Call if you need anything." I asked him if I shouldn't give a stool sample or something and was met with a blank stare. And that was it. So I'm not even bothering going in this time. I can weigh myself at home without having to wait in a pathogen-stuffed waiting room and pay someone $25. Story 36. I sometimes hear a kind of fizzing or bubbling sound coming from the back of my neck around the base of my skull. It sounds quite loud to me, but other people can't hear it. Story 37. So for the last several months, every night anywhere between after midnight and around 6 a.m., my face, ears and/or neck will get hot and flushed and I cannot figure out why. Sometimes it's just one ear or my chin, or a couple patches here and there on my face and neck. I can't link it to any foods or medications, and it just started suddenly one day and happens literally every night that I am awake during those hours. It's so strange. Story 38. I get this whoosh or thumping feeling sound in my head like my heart is beating or army is marching up in my head even when laying down, but feel stupid to go to a doctor for that. Story 39. My food, mind you without stomach acid at all, after eating sometimes comes up a little in my mouth unless I reflexively breathe to prevent that, or when I tilt my head to e.g., wash my hands or smth. As it isn't a reflux syndrome due to the lack of stomach acid, I suppose my food just stays a little longer in my esophagus before entering my stomach, at least when I eat a certain amount. Physical stimulus sometimes makes it then go the other way around. Story 48. But it's such a hassle to jump through all the hoops: referrals, appointments, pharmacies, drug shortages, insurance approvals, ineffective medications, being treated like a drug addict every step of the way if you try to advocate for yourself. Just simpler to raw dog life than to do all that. Story 41. I need to crack every joint in my body fairly regularly, ranges from once a day to multiple times a day. Hands, feet, knees, ankles, shoulders, hips, back. If it bends I need to crack it or I feel really weird. I end up contorting myself into weird positions to do it, but it's actually so satisfying. Story 42. Whenever I sing in the car, I always yawn, even if I'm not tired. My body just makes me yawn and I can't stop it. Every like 20 seconds, but as soon as I stop singing the yawning stops too. Story 43. My ring and pinky fingers are slowly curling inwards. Turns out my granddad had Dupuytren and it's been passed to me. It's not really a problem, I just grab things with 3 fingers now. Story 44. The right upper part of my stomach where top of is partially numb to the touch and constantly stings or inches badly. No discoloration. Sometimes hurts more when I poke my belly out like a balloon. Been over a month now, no clue. Feels deeper than just the skin. Story 45. Random pains in various areas of my trunk and sometimes arms, like rarely arms, but chest is probably a couple times a month. I get all whelp, this is it, I'm going to have a heart attack right in front of this grill and live or die looking like Zuko, and then it just leaves and I sit in contemplation of my dramatic narrative. Story 46. My glands are swollen and painful on one side of my neck under my ear. My son noticed 2 little holes. Spider bite. 24 hours later my gland still hurts. Physically surviving, psychologically not okay about it all. Story 47. My inner ears are chronically, painfully itchy. I didn't use tips when it started last year, but after a few months of the itchiness, I started to, and it hasn't made it any worse, better, but it provides some momentary relief. Sometimes I wake myself up scratching my ear in my sleep. I don't have a fungal infection as my ears do not have gunk in them, but sometimes they do get wet, especially when I use earplugs or in-ear headphones. I've heard this is a symptom of menopause, but I'm only 25. Story 48. If I touch any sort of sandwich with mayo on it, it'll have a moisty mayonnaise I feel on my hands for the rest of the day, no matter how much I wash and clean them. Story 49. I've been trying for years to get someone to take me seriously. You know when you sit on hot leather seats in shorts for a couple HRS, and when you go to get up it feels like you're ripping skin off of your thighs. That's what I feel in my uterus when I stand up sometimes. It's crippling and brings me to my knees. First they said, oh, it's your period. It happened even when I wasn't on my period, so they put me on birth control to not have periods. Then they said it's because I need to lose weight. But this has been happening to me even when I was 115 pounds as a teen. They examined my ovaries and said they were cystic, and left it at that. Now they are blaming the birth control. Story 50. I get incredibly painful abdominal muscle spasms if I or anyone touches my left hip pelvis towards the front on that side. Just the muscles over around it though, not everywhere. I'm ridiculously ticklish, but that spot just sucks. Story 51. Not me, but my husband has the worst breath. I mean foul, like Shrek is fresher than him. Swear the first day we met I offered him gum because it was stinking up my car, It hasn't gotten better after years. People frequently offer him mints because they smell it too. He doesn't smoke or drink alcohol and his oral hygiene is okay. I mean, he flosses and brushes at least once a day and uses mouthwash frequently, but it makes no difference, it's foul. He does drink lots of black tea, no coffee, and has a very healthy diet. What to even do at this point? Story 52. I get something I've always called sticky lung. It happens maybe every 6 months. I breathe in a little way and the pain is excruciating. I have to really steel myself and hold onto something to breath all the way in, and it's so painful, but when I've done it, it's like a release and it doesn't hurt anymore. I've had this for 50 years. Story 53. From time to time, when I hear voices that are lower pitched, I get what feels like a pulsing in one of my ears. It switches sides that pulses in time to the person speaking. Like, if they're quiet, it stops, and it stops between words, but anytime they say a word I get a weird pulse. It's not painful, but it is an uncomfortable sensation, and if I press behind and under my ear it's less, but still present. It's not a heartbeat, but feels like a physical pulse. I've wondered if it's my eardrum reacting for some reason, but I can't reliably reproduce the effect since it's so inconsistent, so I just deal with it. Story 54. I have a pore on my neck that leaks a clear, odorless fluid every so often. It also sometimes has a weirdly stringy hair that I can pull out of it, and when I do, I know it'll leak again for a few minutes. It's never painful, and my best guess is I just have a hair follicle that produces a hair incorrectly, and once the hair comes out, it lets out a few drops of this fluid. Sometimes they will just touch my neck and I realize I'm leaking. I call it my porthole and only my spouse knows about it. Story 55. I am one of those women who is learning that menopause makes your disappear. That was a real mind. For a while before I learned it's fully normal and we just don't warn each other. Story 56. I don't know why, but I cry every time It's been this way since I was about 3. Also, if my toe is ever itchy, I feel like a popping sensation in my ears. Story 57. Both of my hands go numb randomly on a daily basis. I'm pretty sure I have carpal tunnel in my left, which what I attributed the numbness to, but then my right started doing it. It happens even when I'm actively using both hands, so what's going on? Please don't tell me I'm dying though, because I have severe health anxiety, and I'd rather just ignore it. Story 58. Sometimes it hurts to have any pressure on my skin, clothes, light touch, etc. It feels like a mild sunburn or like when you take your hair down from a ponytail. So BRB going to look for nudist colonies in my area. Story 59. Lately I have been yawning excessively, like 10 times in a row, and some of them are incomplete yawns. I also get chills or a tingling sensation down my back on a daily basis. There's probably something wrong with my nervous system. Story 60. I have these funky little bumps on my eyelids. They're not itchy, and they don't go away. A new bump just showed up the other day, but I can't tell if it's a little bump like the other bumps or just acne. The bumps are usually too small for me to think they're acne. Story 61. Every once in a while, I get food stuck between my throat and nose. I have to blow my nose pretty hard to get it out. My theory is some side effect of tonsilladenoids removal. Story 62. It only happens to me maybe like 2 or 3 times a year, but occasionally some small bones in my foot just randomly slips out of joint. It's the weirdest kind of pain I've ever felt, like simultaneously so excruciating you instantly freeze up and can't move a muscle, and then when the shock subsides it quickly ebbs to like meh, and sometimes one of my toes will be sticking out at a weird angle too, but if I tread gently on the arch of my foot with the other foot or massage it gently with my fingers, it'll pop back in again. Most often happens when I'm in the shower, although not 100 of the time. It's occasionally happened with my hip during too. I have to freeze, maneuver myself carefully off my partner, and gently move my legs together slowly, and it'll pop back in and be a-okay. I don't have a connective tissue disorder that I know of, lol, and am not particularly flexible. Oh, and I sometimes get optical migraines, which are really annoying. Story 63. My partner sometimes starts sneezing after eating. He doesn't have any food intolerances and it doesn't happen every time, just every now and sneeze up to 10 times and we can't figure out why. I get a sharp pain like the middle of my chest, lungs, and breathing for a few minutes is sore then passes only sometimes. Story 64. I don't know how to explain this properly, but if I get a really itchy butt cheek while sitting in a chair, my eardrum twitches like crazy in response sometimes to the beat of the itch. Story 65. Pregnancy, like someone is living in me, eating out of me, moving and kicking, and it's considered normal. When I start to think about it, it can freak me out easily. This is so alien experience for me. I can't believe that nature created this weird process. Story 66. My jaw is clenched all the time. Even when I try to actively relax and release it, it's always clenching, and I can cause headaches all the time and jaw fatigue and severe neck pain. I actually have been to the doc for this multiple times. They just told me to relax or take anxiety meds, but it happens when I'm just chilling too, not when I'm anxious. Sometimes if I wake up too early, I sneeze for the next 20 minutes. I always say I'm allergic to waking up early. Story 67. Every so often for years now will get a sharp pain in my left thumbnail and my right shoulder at the same time. They'll both pulse exactly in time with each other for about 30 seconds and quit. Story 68. I have developed an allergy to UV sunlight. Within minutes of exposing any spot of my body to direct sunlight, I start itching and a rash with hives-type welts and red bumps. Even more odd is it always goes away in less than an hour. Story 69. I have terrible night sweats, like dripping sweat. Doctors all say I'm too young, 44 for the big pause, dismiss perimenopause, test my thyroid levels, my hormone levels and tell me everything is fine. Everything is not fine. I'm drenched, the sheets are drenched, the mattress. I'm just a disgusting human being, and the docs give me a pat on the and send me on my way. Story 70. I get nausea as soon as I wake up from as long as I can remember. No doctor has really given an answer for it, so now I just live with it, having ondansetron every day. Story 71. I get the urge to overstretch my joints and can't move on from the urge until I do. Like it's all I can focus on, that part of my body, typically my wrists and ankles. It's like all of a sudden I feel the need to stretch them, but past the point of comfort, and if I don't, my body is hyper-focused on the feeling. Story 72. I have an eating disorder called ARFID that most doctors haven't heard of and don't take seriously, so will just suffer with it forever. It gives me extreme food aversions and sensitivities to texture, temperature, taste, smell, etc. People like to call it the picky eater's disorder, but it's much more complex than that. Mom just assumed I was a picky eater as a kid and that I would grow out of it. I'm 31 now and finding food to eat every day is a serious struggle. Story 73. I've got tons of real medical issues, but the weird one that I don't mention to the doctor is earwax related. I have very wet earwax. It's watery, and it makes my ears feel itchy a lot. It's that feeling of a very slight water trickle. It's not constant or anything, but it's very irritating. I know I'm not supposed to use tips, but I can't not with this stuff. Story 74. I get these areas that feel like pimples on my scalp, that then scab over, and may disappear for a time, only to repeat again and again. I've tried every over-the-counter hair product. I wash my sheets frequently. I think it's causing my hair to thin out, which may be what makes me finally go to the doc, but probably not. Story 75. I have tinnitus so bad that if the room is quiet, it is similar to someone playing a white noise machine in the room with me. If there are other noises, it's drowned out, so I don't worry about it. Story 76. I think I have a rock in my knee. 6-ish months ago, my dog saw a squirrel and took off with me holding the leash, which made me Looney Tunes style fly through the air, land on my side, roll to my back, and I got dragged about 10 to 15 feet. It happened so quickly that I wasn't even aware of how I'd fallen or WTF was even going on until I skidded to a stop. When I checked myself over, I had a scrape on my knee, on my ankle twinged a bit, and my back had gotten a bit shredded. All in all, I was perfectly fine. Right, but ever since then, the knee that had the scrape has been bugging me in the weirdest, most specific way. It's perfectly functional. It doesn't hurt to put weight on it or to walk, crouch, squat, etc. I still have full mobility. It doesn't look out of the ordinary or hurt to touch. I can't feel anything strange when I rub it, no lumps or anything, but if I kneel on it just right at just the right angle, it feels like I'm kneeling on glass and it hurts like. Story 77. I sweat too much. I can be sitting at my desk working on an Excel spreadsheet and my head will be dripping with sweat. I don't like leaving the house anymore because I get a sweaty head and face when standing for more than 3 minutes. I have a really nice neck fan that I wear with me when I go out, which helps a lot, but I still feel sweaty and it's embarrassing. The sweat feels different than the kind of sweat I get when I'm actually exercising and should be sweating. It feels a bit lighter and more watery, and it doesn't smell like sweat. I haven't been to the doctor because I know that it's likely caused by one of my medications and there aren't really any treatments, and I'm guessing the doctor is going to just tell me to exercise more. Which, likeys, I need to exercise more. But dripping sweat while I'm sitting down is not normal or fixed by needing to exercise more. I know this because I've had the same problem for years, even when I exercised more and weighed less than I do now. Story 78. I effectively can't perform a singular sneeze. Whenever I feel the need to sneeze, my body instead forces me into 5 to 7 tiny sneezes that come in a quick succession. Some of my friends say that I sound like a purring cat when I sneeze. I have had it like that since I was a kid, never bothered to ask a doctor about it or really do any research on it. Story 79. The small wound that opened up for me scratching my thigh hasn't healed for over 2 years, and every time I reopen it, it bleeds dark blood. I checked again. It did heal, but it left a dark spot as big as my index fingernail. I'll go to the doctor in a week's time. Story 80. My ring finger and pinky have had pins and needles for a couple of weeks. Fingers at times go completely numb and feel colder than other hand. On second thoughts, maybe I should get it checked. Story 81. Constant back pain. Only reason I haven't is due to previous responses from a doctor telling me I'm overweight and need to lose weight for them to do anything about it. Psoriasis. Had it since I can remember, but is now developing in other areas. Story 82. I'm 27 now, but ever since I was 13 I have these extremely sharp pains in my left shoulder that hinder me, completely useless for the minute or two that they occur, and I can't do anything when they happen, emotionless and in pain grabbing my shoulder. I mentioned it to doctors in the past but never got anywhere, so I assumed it was just a weird body thing. Story 83. I have ganglionic cyst Bible bumps on both my wrist. I work with my hands and eventually they always rupture. It doesn't hurt, but I always notice when it happens. My wrist gets a little warm and then I get some motion back. Story 84. I've been told it could be my rotator cuff by coworkers, but my shoulders have always been very crunchy and weak ever since I was a young kid. I can't hold my arms above my head for more than a few minutes without them feeling fatigued sore, but it's not severe or anything. Also feels like gravel when I try rotating my shoulders. Not sure if the doctor could really do anything for it though. I'm just a crunchy lady. Story 85. My ears feel like they have a bubble in them that distorts my hearing, and if I pinch my nose in while doing it, the bubble pulls back and makes it so I can hear normally. It's been like this forever, and my husband will even pinch my nose for me to help from time to time. I have no idea why this is, but it doesn't hurt or anything, and I'm in the USA so I can't afford to find a fix to it. Story 86. When I get a blood test done I have about 2 hours of where I'm ravenously hungry, and then it's like I turn into a narcoleptic. I literally cannot stay awake for the rest of the day, and if I force myself to stay awake then I either feel super sick or I throw up. Sometimes when I get a blood test it causes the reflex to trigger in my legs, but if you hit my knees to get a reflex check then it doesn't work. Story 87. I have irregular insomnia issues. I generally don't have a problem falling asleep, but staying asleep is an issue. You'll sleep for 3 to 4 hours then I'm wide awake, so I get up, drink coffee, play some video games for a few hours until I'm tired enough to take a nap before work. Sometimes the nap helps, sometimes I don't even sleep, just lay there. Even taking melatonin and sleeping pills doesn't help, because they just help me fall asleep, which I can already do, then they make me feel drowsy all day. Last night I got a whole 6 hours of sleep, which is the most I've had consecutively in like a month if not more. Story 88. I really can't run, and for no good reason. I'm physically in shape, never smoked a day in my life, rarely drink alcohol, and generally am very healthy, but when I run, I taste blood and get horrible side stitches within seconds. If my life ever depended on needing to run, I'd probably be screwed. Story 89. Get super nauseous 2 to 3 times a day. It lasts 30 seconds then subsides. Once in a blue moon it leads to actually puking. Afterwards, it's like it never happened. Story 90. My left shoulder has been hurting and my ring finger and pinky often tingle and go numb. 2 nights ago, my whole arm went numb, so I think it's time to see the doc about it.